Hello everyone, I'm going to be breaking down the upcoming Tier 8 Russian light tank, the T-44 Lightweight, and going over whether or not it's actually worth buying. Now, basically it resembles the T-44 of course because it is basically an early prototype version of it. It's a little bit lighter, it's a light instead of a medium, and a lot of people are going to be really interested in this because currently the Russians do not have a tier 8 premium light tank to train crews, earn credits. So just looking at it here, nothing too special to where essentially it's a T-44 slightly different setup compared to the standard T-44 as far as looks. It's a little bit more compact. However, getting into the meat of things here, the comparison, I have it stacked up against the LTTB, the M41 90mm, the WZ132, and also the T92. It's going to be a direct comparison against the LTTB, but the other three here are kind of other comparisons to add for its same tier counterparts. Two of them being premiums, WZ132 kind of being the closest comparison I find, specifically the T-44 lightweight to the WZ132 outside of the LTTB. Starting out here, it has 180 damage per shot, which isn't bad for a tier 8 light. It's not as good as the M41 90mm or the WZ132, but it is better than the T92 lightweight. It has 182mm standard pen, which is better than the LTTB, a little bit worse than the WZ132, but overall good for a tier 8 light. You are going to struggle with standard penetration against a lot of 9s and 10s, but for the most part it's not really bad. It does have 210mm of premium penetration, which is slightly below the LTTB, and it's also below like the M41 90mm. WZ132, it's slightly below that as well. So while you do have decent standard penetration, your premium penetration is a little bit low compared to your same tier counterparts. Now, getting into the rate of fire, it actually, for 180 damage per shot, it does have a pretty good amount of rate of fire compared to, say, the LTTB. It shoots over, basically 1.5 rounds more per minute than it. It's just behind the T92 light tank over there. It shoots a little under a round less per minute. However, it does have more damage per shot. So what you're going to get with that, going down to DPM, it's got the best standard DPM out of these tanks comparing it to. And these are all 100% crews, no equipment, no crew skills, stuff like that, no camouflage popped on them as well. So pretty even comparison here to where it does have the highest DPM out of these tanks, which, given 180 damage per shot, decent standard pen, and a good DPM, you're going to be able to dish out a lot of damage. Given that this is a light tank, it is, definitely hindered, say, against tier 8 mediums. They're still going to be able to pack a little bit more punch, especially those that have more penetration. So this is going to be good at dealing damage. However, it will struggle against heavily armored tanks and tier 9 and 10 tanks, like most tier 8 lights do already. So dispersion 0.38, which is noticeably worse than the LTTB, but not much worse than, say, the WZ132, T92. It's a little bit worse than that. Putting a V stabilizer on this, you're not going to have too many problems with hitting stuff unless you're trying to snipe at far ranges, which, given your lack of penetration, especially against higher tiers, you're not really going to be doing that anyway. Aiming time, surprisingly pretty good, better than the LTTB by a little bit worse than the M41 and T92. Gun depression is definitely something you're going to struggle with, only 5 degrees, which is the same as the LTTB and the WZ132, noticeably worse than the T92 and M41. So what you have with the T-44 lightweight when it comes to firepower compared to the LTTB, a little bit more penetration on a standard round, less premium penetration, same gun depression. Turret traverse, I forgot to go over. They're more or less, they're both pretty good to where you're not going to struggle with that. But getting into the aiming time, a little bit better aiming time than the LTTB. Worst accuracy in this comparison with the WZ132, and definitely a pretty big comparison difference to the LTTB, to where T-44 lightweight isn't going to win any awards with accuracy, but you do gain a pretty considerable amount of DPM over the LTTB, 261. So it's a trade-off to where you can dish out more damage in the T-44, not T-54 lightweight. You can dish out more damage with the T-44 lightweight compared to the LTTB, but you're going to struggle a little bit more if you're using premium rounds against higher tiers, given the LTTB has more pen with that, and also your overall accuracy is a little bit worse. Moving down to hit points, you have 50 more HP than the LTTB, tied with the M4190 and also the WZ, and a little bit better than the T92 as well. The hull armor, being a T-44, it's got decent hull armor for a light tank. It's the same thickness as the LTTB, but a little bit better angle and protection on that. It's not going to protect you against a lot of things. Tier 7s will still be able to pen you decently, unless they hit your upper hull and it's a little bit angled. However, it will protect you against tier 6s, poorly placed tier 7 shots, tier 8 shots that, hit you in a weird funky spot. But overall, it's still a light tank. It's not going to protect you against most shots that hit you, but it is a nice little added bonus given that you already have good HP for your tier for a light. Your turret armor moving down here is also pretty much the best out of tier 8 light tanks, and it's actually pretty darn good when it's stacked up against tier 9 light tank turret armor. Not that you're going to expect to tank damage in this, especially given the 5 degrees of gun depression, but it is a nice little added bonus to where you will be able to bounce some poorly placed shots. Given, with only, say, going to the penetration here, like 175, 182, 170 for standard rounds in tier 8 lights, poorly placed shots in the turret will bounce off of those, whereas other light tanks, it's pretty much going to be an auto pen, unless you ricochet. Getting down to the mobility, which is crucial for a light tank. The weight, it is pretty heavy. However, the engine power is best out of these light tanks here. The specific power, though, doesn't really make up for it against most lights. 27.1 specific power. Only, besting the M4190 there. So it is noticeably slower than, say, the LTTB. A little bit on the WZ-132, it's a little bit faster. And the T92 light tank, is definitely extremely fast compared to the T-44 lightweight. Top speed, though, nothing crippling the tank here. 68 kilometers an hour is a very good top speed, and the traverse speed is also pretty decent. Before I move on, there are, terrain resistant values, which sometimes can kind of cripple a tank. The LTTB and both the T-44 lightweight don't have the best terrain resistance compared to lights. Say on hard ground, the T92 has 0.29 compared to the LTTB and the T-44 lightweight that has 0.86. So they are, while they are pretty fast still, they are a little bit slower once you factor in that compared to just looking at these stats here. Compared to the LTTB, T-44 lightweight has the same terrain resistant values except for on soft ground. It has 1.92 and the LTTB has 1.53. So more or less with the specific power here, T-44 lightweight is definitely one of the slower tier 8 lights. It's still very mobile, but it's definitely not going to be able to, say, keep its speed going up hills, turning, and also if you hit soft ground, it is going to slow down a lot more than other tier 8 lights. Moving down to camouflage here, it's got pretty decent camouflage, better than the LTTB, M41, and also the WZ-132 by a hair, slightly worse than the T92 light. Again, these are, without camouflage, perks, camo nets, more than 100% cruise, stuff like that. These are just base values, but it does have pretty good camouflage, for even a light tank at tier 8. It's one of the better ones. Spotting, 390 meters of V range, compared to the LTTB that only has 380 It is bested, you know, by the M41 and also the T92, but 390 is above average for a tier 8 light, so no issues there. But going back over, you know, the differences between, specifically, you know, people buying this are going to compare it to the LTTB directly, since, you know, that's the other tier 8 Russian light. But even comparing it to other tier 8 light tank that are premium, like the M41 and T92, which most people consider really good tanks, T-44 lightweight is a very good tank in its current state. You know, average damage per shot, while it doesn't blow you out of the water, 180 isn't, you know, low for a tier 8 light. It kind of sits in the middle of the pack. The main problems you're going to have with this, given that the damage per shot's pretty decent and the DPM is towards the top, if not, you know, one of the best, once you exclude like autoloaders and stuff, DPM tier 8 light tanks, you know, with 2,347 compared to, say, the M4190 that only has 2,276, you're gonna definitely struggle once you start penetrating like heavy tanks, heavily armored TDs, higher tiers, because while your average pen is decent at 182, your premium penetration's a little bit lower, to where you start struggling penetrating some weak spots when you come across tier 9 heavies, tier 10 heavies. You're not going to be able to penetrate them very well. Whereas, say, like the M4190, it has a 250 millimeter pen heat round that can punch through a little bit thicker armor in spots, albeit not ideal, but it is a pretty noticeable weakness on the T-44 lightweight. The 5 degrees of gun depression definitely makes it hard to damage things at times, like the LTTB. It's not like it's the M41 or the T92 with better gun depression, to where you can fight over some hills. This will not be able to do that. But really, there's no glaring weaknesses when it comes to the T44 lightweight. You know, it's got a good DPM gun. Accuracy, while not as good as the LTTB, it's decent, especially once you add in like a vertical stabilizer and other crew skills. It's workable. Really, you know, the HP's decent. It's got really good armor for a tier 8 light, to where you're still not going to bounce a lot of shells, especially from tier 8 to 10 tanks, but you will actually have a chance compared to other lights that have no chance at all to bounce things. And the mobility, albeit a little bit lower than most other tier 8 lights, it is still pretty good in the grand scheme of things, to where it's still going to be zipping around and faster than medium tanks. So overall, what you have is a pretty darn good tier 8 premium light tank, to where you have a gun that definitely can dish out damage, albeit against tanks without a ton of armor. But most tier 8 lights already struggle with that. Discus has a little bit worse problems with it. You got decent armor. You know, all around, it's a pretty good package, T-44 lightweight. Whether or not it's worth buying, you know, you definitely have to weigh your options. If you need a Russian light tank crew trainer, definitely hop on this, because it does perform pretty well. It does play a little bit differently than other Russian lights, especially once you start getting past the LTTB, but it does perform very well in a tier 8 light role. Comparing it against, say, like the T92 light or the M41, you know, the M41 definitely can deal out a little bit more damage than the T44 light against basically a wider array of targets, given it has more penetration for a premium round. However, you know, the T92 light will also outscout it. T44 is kind of a blend where it's got better firepower than the T92 light. However, it has worse firepower than the M41 90 once you factor in everything. However, it is a little bit faster than the M41 90, the T44 lightweight, but it's a little bit slower and worse of a scout than the T92 light. So it's really kind of a, you know, middle ground between those two premium tier 8 lights, and I think it actually works. You know, it is kind of a reskin of a T-44, which we already have plenty of those, but you know, it actually works as a tier 8 light tank, to where I think a lot of people are going to like this. And if you need a crew trainer, it's definitely something to pick up. Credit trainer wise, you know, it's probably not the best to go for this, because you do need some premium rounds in it for dealing with tier 9s and 10s. You're better off with you know, a non-tier 8 light tank, you know, premium tank if you want credits. But for a crew trainer and performance wise, if you like lights, T-44 lightweight is a good tank in the grand scheme of things. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this video. Hopefully it helped you out a little bit with deciding whether or not this tank is going to be worth picking up when it does come on sale. But I think it's going to be a fun light for a lot of people. And with the amount of Russian premium tanks we already have, it's kind of surprising it's taken this long to get to a tier 8 light. But anyway, thanks again for watching. Have a very nice day, and see you around sometime soon.